Welcome back to Operation Freedom, folks. I'm Dr. Dave Janda, broadcasting from our ancillary bunker linked to Marine Freedom Bunker in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, here live for every Sunday from 2 to 5 Eastern, 24/7 with extra shows, content, guests, analysis, archives to all of our shows at davejanda.com. Stop on by. You will not be disappointed, but I guarantee you this. There are very few things in life that you can guarantee. I guarantee you this. You go to davejanda.com, you will be educated and empowered. Yeah, exactly what the globalist cult does not want. They want you misinformed, disinformed, and completely uninformed. Why? Because it makes you an easier target and victim of their freedom stripping agenda. Which is why they despise us, which makes me so happy. Many people know me say, why do you like people despising you so much? And my answer is, no, family and friends, I want them to love me. But when it comes to the globalist cult scumbags, yeah, I want them to hate me. Because it means I'm exposing their underbelly. Sharon Moore, who is the new coach of the University of Michigan Wolverines, I had an opportunity to meet him and talk to him a couple months ago. Great guy. He was the interim coach when the NCAA was pulling their totalitarian stuff on Harbaugh. Didn't matter, Sharon won all three games, the end of the game, last three games of the year. It was fantastic, And he was at a camp for football players at Wayne State University, downtown Detroit, on this past Friday. And he delivered the quote of the day. And this goes, I just identified with this the minute I heard it. Huh? Because this is how I look at how I handle the globalist cult scumbags. Here's what he said. Because the globalist cult scum, all they do is hate, right? Hate anybody that focuses on helping others. All right, here's what Sharon Moore said. Quote, "Your haters are holding their breath for you to fail. Your job is to make their asses suffocate." End quote. Yeah, that's right. That's my goal. To suffocate the globalist cult scumbags and their freedom stripping agenda. And luckily, we have people like the guests that put their lives on the line, by the way, coming on this show and on our platform to speak about what's really happening. As I mentioned, I'm honored to have with me today someone for the entire hour, Commander Scott Snow. 3,200 hours in a fighter, in particular 2,025 hours in the F-14. He also flew the F-16 and 18, 618 landings on aircraft carriers, 335 combat hours, and he was in charge of aviation operations for all carrier groups in the Pacific Fleet and oversaw operations for the Top Gun program. If you missed our first half-hour discussion, which, that was not a good move on your part. But here's the good news. I got the good news. It's available due to my wingman, Derek Stone. It will be up at davejanda.com. The entire show, commercial free, at davejanda.com by 8 p.m. tonight. Stop on by. It's my honor to welcome back Commander Scott Snow. Scott, welcome back.
Thank you, Doc. Good to be with you.
All right, Scott. Hey, how about that suffocation, huh? You all bought it?
Oh, I can't wait to get them to suffocate. Being, right. Getting the knowledge out there so people can make up their own informed decisions is all the difference in the world.
It is. So, Scott, let's turn to the three fronts that I outlined prior to the break. Let's get your take first, Scott, on the Russia-Ukraine situation, because as this goat rodeo was being announced in this kangaroo, third world, banana republic court decision in New York City, while all that was kind of hovering around and buzzing around all the airwaves, the globalist cult scum around Biden, because I'm not sure how much of this he was cognizant about, secretly gave Ukraine permission to strike inside Russia with U.S. weapons. This from Aaron Bacco, Alexander Ward, and Laura Seligman from Politico, no less. Biden secretly gave Ukraine permission to strike inside Russia with U.S. weapons. The Biden administration has quietly given Ukraine permission to strike inside Russia, solely near the area of Kharkiv. Using U.S.-provided weapons, 3 U.S. officials and 2 other people familiar with the move said that this was a major reversal that will supposedly help Ukraine. Scott, I read this as this move is one giant step toward World War III. Am I off?
No, you're 100% correct. And it's the desperation that, this administration cannot afford, nor the West in general can afford to have Ukraine go down the way it's going to go down. Ukraine has already lost. They've already devolved into, now they're using guerrilla tactics, using terrorist tactics against Russia to try and prolong and keep things going because they got to get past the election. If they can't get this past the election, then all is lost. And it is lost from the debt-ridden West that is both France, it's NATO, it's the U.S. NATO has lost this. In their proxy war that they tried against the Russians, they lost and lost badly. And the only thing keeping this from ending quickly is Putin's resolve and reserve of not going full on and going into a nuclear response. But the West is doing everything they can to elicit a nuclear response. This is their end goal, is what they want. Part of that false flag that I talked about previous to the election, they want this to go nuclear, whether it's tactical or global. This is what they want. It's a death cult that is it's in the dying throes of their regime, and they want it to end this way. Because if they can't win, they don't want anyone else to win. They flip the card table over. We're over.
And Scott, the misnomer I believe about these advanced weapon systems that the United States is sending over, people are acting like these are like point and shoot cameras. Scott, tell me if I'm off. You're the pro, but with these advanced weapon systems, you need technicians that are beyond trained for weeks, months, into the years category that only, for example, with the advanced U.S. weapon system, that only U.S. personnel can provide. So it's not just you're providing these weapon systems, you're providing the personnel to deliver the ordnance into Russia. What stops Putin from saying, yeah, guess what? I know, where the tactical facility is that led to the logistics for this weapon to be shot deep into my country. And by the way, I know exactly where this weapon system was produced on shore in the United States. I mean, when these kooks are shooting these things into Russia, it's not just a couple bucketheads that are Ukrainians that have no training that are doing it. It's us, right?
No, it's 100% us. It's all the way down to where we're probably grabbing. If you remember as a kid and you're roughhousing with your dad and he's grabbing your arms and like whacking you in the face, like, stop hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself. Well, that's us as the U.S. We're grabbing the Ukrainian hand and pushing the red button with it. We've done everything else behind the background. We already did all the targeting. We did all the intelligence. We did all the calculations, all the weaponeering for whatever weapon system we're going to send that way. The last thing to do is push the button, and let alone it probably doesn't take a Ukrainian finger to go push that button. One of ours will do it.
And Scott, when Macron and Schultz from Germany and some of these kooks in Poland start saying, "Oh, we're going to send personnel into Ukraine," Austin, the Secretary of Defense, is talking about not just sending personnel into Ukraine, but actually kind of insinuating that, we might have to institute a draft. I mean, Scott, all these are beyond over the red line. As you said, they're starting. They want to start. The West wants to lead this whole entire mess, not into a peace process, but into a nuclear event. Am I off?
No, you're 100% on. And the thing that Dave, to me, the most scary piece of this is, Putin, love him or hate him, he's a strong leader. Xi, love him or hate him, is a strong leader. Well, those two are hand in glove working together. And so now it's not just everyone's like focused, oh, it's just Ukraine. It's just this one little piece. They don't see the big global picture, which is as soon as Putin decides, okay, I've had enough, we're going to go, guess what's coming across the Taiwan Straits? It's going to be China going to take over Taiwan. Oh, and by the way, we're going to do that at the same time that now Iran, which is one of our Russian proxies, well, why don't we get them a little leg up and get them to fire up in the Middle East? So now you have three fronts going on, aside from the war of the U.S. government against the U.S. people, that's our fourth front, but now you have three kinetic wars going on at the same time. And we're not equipped for that. And there's no way out of that.
So let's look at, you mentioned China, Taiwan. As I mentioned, you ran operations for the entire Pacific Fleet. Okay, let's talk China, Taiwan. There are many people, when I talk about this, Scott, that say, Dave, China is never going into Taiwan. Taiwan is so militarily equipped. The United States government has their back. There's no way China is going. Scott, last week, currently, there are 42 ships at least surrounding Taiwan. Penetration through their air defenses every day by the dozens. Scott, you're the pro. You're the pro. Which way is it here?
Oh, Taiwan can snap their fingers and take, basically China can take Taiwan with the snap of the fingers. The problem being is such a logistical commitment and operation that we just cannot get the forces there in time and in the required numbers to be able to stave off something that's going to happen in a matter of hours. We need much like Iraq won. So back in 1990, and look at how many months we had to stock everything up and get it to the Middle East to get ready, set, let's go. And we had 3 weeks of preparation before we kicked the door down. This is going to happen instantaneously. And China's already amassed and ready to go. It's just a matter of timing.
And the timing, you've always outlined, Scott. There's a couple timelines that they have. One is that May, beginning of June corridor, weather-wise, and another in end of September going into October. Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, that is correct.
So is it too late now? And right now they're doing kind of the appetizer where they're surrounding. Do you think at this point they go in, or are they just kind of setting the stage for the September-October window?
They're setting the stage for September-October. This is the rope-a-dope. This is the, hey, new president, look at us, and you can't do anything against us to stop. We have free reign over you, your island, and your country, and then they're going to back off, quiet down for a couple months, and then September, October, I think, is go time.
And many people say, okay, well, let's say they get into Taiwan. It's not going to be that big a deal. Well, wait now, Scott. 70% of the world market share of the semiconductor industry that is involved in, I don't know, anything that has a screen or doesn't even have it, that moves, has semiconductors at this point, right?
Yep.
They go into Taiwan and get control of the semiconductor industry. Is it an overstatement to say, honey, they just turned the lights out?
No, it's spot on. If you think of it as a strategic mindset, Dave, of we now have a highly technologically dependent society throughout the West, throughout most of the globe. And now I'm going to take 70% of what they depend on to operate, and I now own it. So what have I done? I now own basically all of the technologically dependent countries around the globe. You can go and get a $15,000 iPhone if you can get one, but guess what? The days of I'm going to go get this techno gadget and this techno gadget, and I'm going to run my power grid off this techno gadget. those aren't going to be supportable anymore. And anything that runs on a chip, much like you saw with the automotive industry a couple of years back, where they have all these brand new cars just waiting on one little chip to make the thing run. If you don't have that chip, no run.
So, Scott, let's put you back in charge of operations for the Pacific Fleet. What are the red flags that you would look for that an invasion of Taiwan was imminent?
Multiple things that would make that. One, timing. Timing is always true to the course. You would want SIGINT, so you want to have signal intelligence and understand that, hey, this is ramping up. But then it's also logistics. It's all logistics. Always will be. Is when they start massing, because you're not going to launch everything from all over the places of the country. You're going to consolidate it at the shore, the closest place where now you're going to take off. You're going to have the most fuel, the most weapons, the most payload, ready, set, go. But they want to have everything as close to Taiwan as possible to make that leap across and have that staying power, airborne as well as seaborne, to be able to take the fight to Taiwan and win. So that's what you're going to see. But I think before you see that, I think you're going to see some diplomatic relationship talk between Putin and Xi, because they're not going to do this without consulting each other, guaranteed.
Well, and they just had a powwow, right? Where Putin was they were talking about being brothers, right? They had a meeting in China, Putin and Xi, kind of like the new Blues Brothers. And the last time they had a soiree like this in China was right before the China Olympics, and what happened right after that? Well, the whole Russia-Ukraine thing got going. So you're right. They just had this meeting, right?
Yeah, May 16th and 17th. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we have this big BRICS meeting coming up, or that's actually been going on the past several days, and will go on for another 10 days, I believe, as it relates to the BRICS group and the whole financial situation. And you believe you're going to see a coordinated event, if I have this right, with escalation in Ukraine, China, Taiwan, and in the Middle East starting to beyond smolder again at the same time, correct?
I agree with that completely. One of the things when people think about BRICS, Dave, real quick, is what they don't understand is that 75% of the global population are now working with BRICS.
Yep.
And the biggest one thing you learn in war, it's not all kinetic, it's not all political. One of the biggest weapons we had as the reserve currency with the U.S. dollar, the dollar was a weapon. And now that they're disarming the dollar by going to a BRICS currency that's backed by commodities, that's what's going to take the wind out of the sails. And so now you have a barking dog with no bite, because the U.S. dollar is soon to no longer be the world reserve currency and no longer required to buy oil or be the useful tool for trade. Now they can trade in whatever currency they want to. And that's I think, at the end of the day, what the Western powers are most scared about.
And now let's turn to the Middle East. Scott, you and I have voiced concern on what happened October 7th, not only on the butcher side of the equation, if you will, Hamas and what was done, but also on how in the world did this allow it to be happen, right? You have one of the most well-funded, supposedly one of the most astute militaries, one of the most astute intelligence services, that being the Mossad and Bin Shet and the like, and you had the most technologically secure border system that had been created, yet a bunch of dudes in pickup trucks, hang gliders, shovels, and pitchforks ended up being able to pull this off, right? Scott, none of this really adds up, right? And then you see Netanyahu saying, "Oh, we're going to develop Gaza for Israeli citizens for settlements," right? And Scott, what's your take, and where's this headed?
I don't think they're going to stop until they get stopped. and that's the problem. Is one where people don't see this thing in. They're like, oh, these terrible things that happened on October 7th. Yeah, granted, absolutely. Terrible terrorists are terrorists, and that's what they're going to do. But when does it get to a point of no return? And that's where you're at 35,000 plus civilians that have been killed in Gaza, and they're still continuing to this day. And when you have the U.S. backing and still sending all the weapons over, but we're going to withhold a few because they're trying to play this political game of, well, I don't want to piss off everybody in, Minneapolis because then they won't vote for me, but I still want to support the Zionists and let them bomb everybody in Gaza and let it go. Israel's going to go until the end. They're not going to stop until they are stopped. And that's the biggest scare to me, is that they're in this, again, the box canyon of they can't shoot their way out of it. And it's going to come to a finality that they no longer really have control over.
And by finality, you mean a nuclear event?
Exactly. They're going to get to a point that right now they've ruffled the feathers, and not even that's a very kind term. They have pissed off everybody in the region, to a point that Hezbollah is sitting, right across the border from the north. They have hundreds of thousands of missiles. They could annihilate Israel just in and of themselves, let alone you get Iran all wound up. And don't get into, it's a Bell 407, it's a totally safe helicopter unless the president's on it. And then it's suddenly foggy and he's in a mountainside. I've flown those. Yeah, that didn't really, the giggle check didn't really work on that one. So it's one where they're going to keep pressing down the road until everyone around them finally says enough's enough. And they go after Israel.
Scott, in our final minute and a half together today, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your willingness to speak about these issues, because many people in your position are not willing to step forward. And I thank you for that, Scott, for your perseverance, dedication, and sacrifice on behalf of the public, worldwide public, and for bringing the truth from someone who has been on the front line. But educate our listeners, Scott, on how they can follow you on a regular basis.
Well, what I'd like to do, Dave, is actually kind of dovetail onto your proactive versus reactive medicine. So one of the biggest things that we lack is hormone balance, and if they would just go to rebalancehealth.com, and you find a natural way to rebalance your hormones and live a much better life, clear your head, and now all this knowledge that you and I put out will actually sink in, and they can do something about it.